Welcome back to another episode, everybody. So today I am very excited for this episode because we're going to be delving into a long-standing debate on nature versus nurture and which of these two play a more significant role on our predisposition to success. So for a little bit of context, this debate centers on whether genetic inheritance, in other words, nature, or environmental factors, therefore nurture, play a more significant role in shaping our individuals or an individual's characteristics. And this includes things like intelligence, emotional maturity, behaviors, and predisposition to success. Now, like I said, this is a very long-standing debate, and it has some significant roots in history. So there's a lot of early philosophical work and discussions with figures, for example, like John Locke, who advocated for the so-called blank slate theory, or in other words, we're all born analogous to a blank slate that is then filled up by our environmental factors. But then on the other side, contrarily, we have figures like Francis Galton, who argued for the primacy of genetic influence. In other words, that our baseline of intelligence and emotional maturity and, et cetera, all those characteristics are set by our nature. Now, this has taken a significant shift, obviously, with a more modern understanding. So there's been advances in genetics, psychology, neuroscience, and they've all provided a more nuanced understanding, suggesting that there's a complex interplay between genes and environment that lead ultimately to our success in life. Now, I want to approach this argument from both sides and kind of lay out the research and the backing for both sides of this debate. To begin with, looking at the genetic inheritance and specifically towards intelligence. Now, it's pretty well understood that intelligence is partially heritable, but studies have indicated that roughly 50 to 80% of an individual's IQ variation, or its variance, is dictated by their genetics. But this comes with a caveat in that heritability does not imply destiny. What it basically is saying that you might have a variation or a range within a range within what your IQ can fluctuate given your environmental factors, but it doesn't limit an individual's potential. And to further back this argument, research has also identified several genes that, while are associated with cognitive functions, no individual intelligence gene has been identified. So in other words, intelligence is more polygenic and it's influenced by a lot of different factors, not just our predisposed DNA and the fabric that writes us. To further add on to this discussion, there's also the environmental impacts on intelligence development that we need to take into consideration. So there are a plethora of environmental factors, and they are very multifaceted. These are factors that include, for example, the quality of your education, your socio-economic status, your nutrition, your level of physical activity, and all of these play an especially significant role in cognitive development in our early childhood. So in other words, our early childhood sets the stage for what we're going to be considering our norm later in life. Now, there are two of these factors that I wanted to highlight because they play a more significant role than the others. And those are, first of all, your socioeconomic status, because that dictates a lot of everything else, really. Dictates the access to quality foods, to sports and extra curricular activities, the level of your schooling, etc. And on that, the second thing is the schooling. Obviously, schooling plays a very substantial effect on how your IQ will develop as you age. So those are basically the two main takeaways from this section. Now, with all this talk of external stimuli modifying our brain, it's only right to bring up the role of neuroplasticity. So for those that aren't aware, neuroplasticity refers to our brain's capacity to reorganize and develop new neural connections in response to external stimuli. And this is key in learning and development. It basically refers to the adaptability of the brain in terms of compensation for injury, disease, or other external stressors. And there's been a ton of studies on neuroplasticity which demonstrate that through various experiences, including learning, which was the biggest one, they physically change the makeup of our brain through new neural pathways. So this goes to show that every minute, every day, when we're inputting new information and learning, it is physically changing the makeup of our brain. Another very interesting perspective as to how a different environment can stimulate different sort of responses in individuals is when looking at individual differences in similar environments. In other words, a good example of this is a set of siblings, for example, that grow up in an alcoholic home. Typically, based on just the understanding that our environment leads to our outcome, you would think in that case that both of those children would be doomed to follow in the footsteps of their parents. But this is oftentimes not the case. which just kind of highlights a little bit the fact that there is maybe a predisposed level of achievement that's kind of ingrained in us, whereas other people, let's say, might be more predisposed to their environmental stimuli kind of influencing where they go in life. Now, having covered everything before, this brings us into the bulk of what I'd like to discuss today. And that is a concept that I see seldomly discussed, but when I do get a little taste of it, I really, really can't get enough. And that's the concept of nurturing nature. So this boils down to basically being able to identify people's strengths in them, whether they are aware of them or not, and then nurturing those behaviors to expand their potential. So everybody has an innate set of talents or things that they're predisposed to be good at, and it's almost our role in a relationship, whether it's intimate or platonic with friends, or especially in a business or work setting. If we identify people that are good at certain things, then we need to promote that behavior. We need to put them in a situation where they thrive. And this goes into a big overarching discussion, for example, of tailoring education towards people's strengths, the role of personalized learning, and a number of different pathways that we can basically use to put people's talents on a pedestal. Now, there is a large consensus that's kind of emerging from a body of psychologists and neuroscientists that kind of state that nature and nurture interact in a very complex manner, and they shape an individual's outcomes. So, for instance, a genetic predisposition might provide a potential for a particular skill, whether it's their persistence or their ability to tackle complex problems, or their copywriting skills, or their athletic performance. But whether that potential is realized depends very significantly on environmental factors such as training, their support systems, their family, and their social surroundings. So I think a big thing that we need to understand is to recognize and encourage an individual's unique talents. This can have a huge, not only a huge outcome on their personal outcomes, but also on their self-esteem. We're talking a lot about now delving into the realm of their mental health. When somebody feels like they're actually being congratulated and pushed towards doing something that they love, they care about, and that obviously they're good at, then of course they're going to thrive. So this goes far deeper than just, doing something good for someone else. This is more about bringing a society together that functions harmoniously together. And this is even supported by psychological theories, for example, such as Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Deci and Ryan's self-determination theory, both of which highlight the importance of recognition and positive reinforcement in personal development and motivation. The point that I really hope people can take away from this is that I feel like it's our duty to highlight other people's strengths. That's how we grow as individuals ourselves, but it really just helps build a better society. If you're regularly telling your friends and the people around you, even your parents or your intimate partner, that you see their strengths, you see the things that they're good at, you put it on a pedestal, and you reinforce that behavior, and you build an environment around it that supports it, then everybody is going to benefit in the end. You're going to be more satisfied because you did a positive thing to someone else. You positively helped someone else grow. They're going to feel great because they're being recognized for having an innate talent in something. And in the end, we work together that way. We build closer connections that way. Even take this in a professional setting. If you're leading a team and you know that somebody is inherently good at, let's say, working problems mathematically better than anybody else, then put them in that role. Let them thrive in it. Or if someone is predisposed to being really persistent, that's the talent that they have, then reward it and encourage it. When we can identify other people's behaviors and support them and build an environment around them to nurture their nature, then we have basically created a recipe for success for all of society. Now, of course, it's obviously a dream to be able to hype and encourage other people's behaviors as well, but we also can't forget about ourselves. When you're looking for talent in other people, please take a moment to take a step back and reflect at what you are good at. And you might be saying like, I'm no good at sports. I'm not physically active, or I don't have a 150 IQ, or, I'm not good at math, or I'm not good at whatever. But those don't have to be the only kind of talents we acknowledge. Maybe your talent is your persistence. Maybe your talent is your thoughtfulness in others. Maybe your talent is your empathy. Maybe it's your ability to listen and be there for other people. Maybe it's, who knows, maybe it's just the light that you bring to other people's lives. All of those are worthy of their own respect, and they're worthy of being encouraged and motivated as well. So please always make sure that you take a look at yourself too, because it's not going to work if you're hyping other people up and not yourself. We are all in this together. And that is really what I hope that I can leave with everybody today. I hope that this was an interesting discussion for everybody, and I hope it kind of highlighted the synergistic relationship that nature and nurture have with one another. And I hope it's something that you can take a closer look at when you look at other people, the close people that you have in your relationships. Maybe take the time to reach out to them again. Maybe take the time to highlight their strengths. Just keep hyping people up. It's only going to be for the good. So thank you very much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'm very excited to see you all in the next one. Peace.